Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Douglas. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it as well.
So, looking at your bio, you are an author, a teacher, and you have a company, leadership consulting and executive coaching.
Yes, yes.
So,
My
you
company
are
is Chatsworth Consulting Group. Yes.
okay. Tell me just a little bit about what your company does. What do you do exactly?
So we do everything from full-blown multi-day leadership programs to one-off management or leadership skills training sessions. We do a lot of work with leadership teams or intact teams, helping them have strategic conversations, critical conversations, tough conversations, creating a space so they can figure out how to work together better. And then we work individually with clients as executive coaches. So I like to say we work on the inter and intrapersonal skills, helping. We talk about thoughtful leadership. So we help all our leaders be more present, be more authentic, and be more intentional, really showing up as their best selves to do the best for their work and in the world.
So, a company or corporation would hire you to come in and work with the managers and the workers. So you're sort of like a labor negotiator in
A labor
a.
negotiator. I've been called a corporate counselor. We're the ones who come in and help people realize how they're getting in their own ways, realize their self-defeating behaviors, I realize why I'm driving you crazy, you realize why you're driving me crazy, and how do we manage to work that together. Life would be great if we didn't have to work with other people, and life would be awful if we didn't have to work with other people. So we try and help people learn how to work and live together more easily, more effectively, and have a better time at it.
You're exactly right on that point. It's a very double-edged sword,
Yeah,
isn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if each one of us was our own self-contained little unit running around in this world, it'd be madness, wouldn't it?
It'd be madness and we'd be miserable. We are, by definition, social animals. We crave community. It's one of the things that makes things like the way I grew up possible. We crave community, we crave others, but then we also have this mindset that the way we see the world is the way that makes sense to see the world. And when other people see it differently, that's, and which they do, that's where the problems really start and occur. So we kind of dig down on the how I think I'm always right and my way is right and you think you're always right and how do we negotiate that kind of thing.
Okay. You brought up your childhood, which is a great segue for your book. I bet you
You?
did that on purpose. That was good. Your book is called To the Moon and Back, A Child Under the Influence. I just, from the title and the quick synopsis, it sounds wild. Why don't you just tell us about it?
So the way I describe my childhood, the line I use is the best seats I ever had at Madison Square Garden were at my mother's wedding because my mom got married on July 1st, 1982 in Madison Square Garden with 2,075 other couples. We were members of the Unification Church, the Moonies, and that's how
Oh,
I grew up. And on the other hand, the best cocaine I ever had was from my father's friend, the judge. And someone recently said, "You're joking about the judge part." I'm like, no, he was a judge of a small town in New Jersey. So I grew up, in a religious, fanatical, puritanical cult on one side with my mom and in a life of sex, drugs, and squalor with my dad's hippie lifestyle in New York City East Village in the 1970s. So it was two quite contrasting, crazy, interesting worlds. And so my book, To the Moon and Back, is about all that happened, how we got into the Moonies, how we got into the church, how I eventually got out of the church, how all of it affected me, and how I realized that. And that's kind of a moving forward today.
I realize the term that opposites attract, but yours sounds like to the nth degree. How in the world did your father and mother get together?
Before someone just asked, actually, my kid just asked me that. Don't you wonder how your parents got together? Before the whole church thing happened, my mom was always a seeker. My dad was always a radical, kind of different person. They went to different high schools. Someone introduced them when they were 17 or 18 years old. And yeah, opposites attracted. She was the goody two shoes daughter of the town judge and not the one who gave me cocaine. And he, was a son of communist, socialist, intellectual, radical parents. And they just kind of melded together and lasted for a couple of years and then completely quickly completely split. And they lead these two separate lives, which is how I got to just go back and forth between, in my mind at that point, it was God and Satan that I was going back and forth between.
Wow. So that lasted your entire. They were married and then got divorced. How old were you when they got divorced?
So let's see, they got together when they were 18, had my brother when they were 19, me when they were 20, and they split when I was somewhere between 2 and 3. And they didn't get divorced actually until I was about 9, but they split when I was about 2 or 3 years old. Devastated me. But, yeah.
So they separated for a while first and then got divorced.
Yeah.
So you were between both of them?
Mostly we lived with my mom. Even at that point, I was terrified of my dad's lifestyle. It was just, whatever. It was scary to me. And so I was really a mommy's kid. And so I really spent most of my time with my mom, but we did go back and forth. Sometimes my dad he would head to Morocco for half a year. He would travel the world. He just lived this 1960s hippie lifestyle. But when he came back, he lived in New York City, and we would go in and visit him, my brother, more than I did. But, he was, if you read the book, so he was an interesting influence. At the age of when my brother was 10, my father had him start smoking pot, marijuana, weed, because he and his friends thought it would be funny if Robbie did smoke, right? That was the dad influence that I had on his side. So we lived back and forth. And then, so the story goes, we lived with my mom, visited my dad, and then the summer that I was about to go into 3rd grade, my mom actually bought a van from my father, from Danny, and we were going to drive across country to California and move on to a commune. But my mom's mom got sick with cancer, so instead we drove across New Jersey and moved in with my grandparents. And we lived with them, and my grandmother did get sicker and passed away. And we stayed with my grandfather. My mom was taking care of the house for him. And then it was when we were living with my grandfather that my mother found the Mooney Son, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, and long story short, left us with my grandfather to go move into the church full time.
So the spiritual epiphany of the Mooney Church was more important to your mother than her children?
Yeah. So that is a very good way to put it. And yes, that's actually true. And actually what really happened is, so she found the church, her friend sent her to hear Reverend Moon speak, and she went to hear him speak, and she was just enraptured with what he was saying. And then a couple months later, she didn't get very involved, and a couple months later, someone in the church convinced her to go up to Barrytown, New York, where they had this huge seminary where they indoctrinated people. And my mom went up for a weekend and came back and went up for a week and came back and went up for another week, and then came back and took us up, and we pull up to this big building, and we go into this huge gymnasium, and all the women, the sisters are sitting on the right side of the floor, and all the brothers, the men are sitting on the other side, on the left side. And within moments, Reverend Sun Myung Moon walks in and starts speaking with his interpreter, and that was it. We were in. He was my Messiah. And we continued to live with my grandfather, and my mother just started going more. We were living outside of New York City at the time, and my mom started going into New York City more and more often for longer time, longer days, to work at the church. And finally, she sat my older brother, Robbie, and I down and said, "What do you think I should do? I feel called to give more." And we said, "Leave, leave us, go, move in. You should move in." And so she did. So she moved in. And so what I will tell you is, knowing you have the truth is the most intoxicating drug there ever is that I've ever seen or experienced. And so when you believe in a truth, even if it's not true, right? But when you believe that fervently in an extreme ideology or religion, everything else pales. And so we were taught to sacrifice everything we wanted for God and for Reverend Moon, my true father, my true mother, Reverend Moon and Mrs. Moon. And so, yeah, it was more important for her to help save the world for God than to live with her kids.
Wow.
Wow is a good way to put it, yeah.
That's inconceivable to me. I mean, no matter what, I think my own children would have to come first before anything. Yeah.
I would absolutely agree. My own children absolutely come first, yeah.
Are your parents still alive?
They are both still alive, yes.
How's your relationship with them now?
That's a very good question. So we'll go with my dad, Danny, and I do call him Danny. I've always called him Danny. He was a hippie when I was a kid. He used to say, "I'm a person. I'm not a position. Don't call me father. Call me Danny. If you call me father, I'll call you daughter. If you call me daddy, I'll call you Dottie. Call me by my name. So that's Danny. Danny is, my parents are still very young. So he's 77. He had a stroke when he was 64 years old from unfortunately still doing too much cocaine, and is half paralyzed in a nursing home. He's a very old 77-year-old man, and I am his primary caregiver. So we have a relationship that's close in many ways, but he still can be rageful and harsh and kind of scary. So it's like close, but with a buffer to keep it safe is how I've learned to do it, because I take care of him because I want to and because I care for him and I have compassion. I adore my father, but he's not easy. He's never been easy. So it's like I take care of him, but I take care of him with a buffer to keep myself safe, if that makes sense. And then my mom is another good story. So my mom also left the church. I left in the early 80s, and my mom left in 1996. And since this long process of when she's been out, it's been a long process of trying to rebuild a relationship. And but my mother could not own what she did for a very long time, until very, very recently, until actually just after the book came out. My mom, not only did she move into the church, but she moved into the church and spent much of her time in the church taking care of other people's kids. So Reverend Sangerman would bless couples in marriage, like in these huge weddings, and then they would have children called blessed children, children born without any original sin. And the members would leave their children in nurseries and go off and do work for the church, and my mom would take care of these kids. And so to this day, I meet, now they're adults, but I meet these people who say, oh, your mother took such good care of me. And my mom used to literally call my brother and I up and say, I just talked to so-and-so. They're so traumatized because their parents left when they were little. And we would be like, yeah, they are, right? Because she would not grasp what she did, the choices she made. And I finally came to a point where I didn't need her to, that I finally thought, I think if she ever realizes it, it will crack her, because I couldn't have done what she did and still live with that, to my kids. And, but after the book, somehow something shifted for her. And for the first time, she was able to see, as she says, not her intention, but the impact of what she did. So since then, I got to the point where I'm like, you're in my life, but I'm also keeping you at a distance because you keep saying and doing these really mean things. And she is showing up more consistently, more taking accountability, taking ownership of the choices she made than I ever thought she would. So we are now quite close, but there's kind of always that underlying thing of, literally just last Thanksgiving, my mother said to me, well, I never felt like I left because you were always in my heart. And I said, let's get this really clear. You left and you didn't come back, right? And just because I was in your heart doesn't mean you didn't leave me. And so we still negotiated, but we've worked through a lot of it, I'm lucky to say.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, but it's interesting, and I've had that in my own relationship. Sometimes parents have a real difficult time being introspective when it comes to how they have raised their children. Yeah. They just haven't a clue, but we can see it when they relate with other people, and especially other people's children. Yeah. I had a very similar situation, not to the extreme that yours did, but I would have this very sort of cold relationship with my mother for most of my life. And yet when she would go to friends' houses, she was a totally different person when she played with their kids. I'm talking about when we were little, Yeah. But I could feel it. I could feel it when I was, 6, 7 years old. And it's very strange. And they just haven't a clue.
They just haven't a clue. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because another pattern with my mom, so when she lived in the church in New York City and we would sometimes go in and visit her, we would go out to dinner with her sometimes, and she always brought other church members. She took such good care of other church members. She always like, kids, spread your love your brothers and sisters. And they would invariably say to us, oh, your mother takes such good care of us. She's such a good mother to us. And at the time we were like, yes, that's great. And I bring this up because literally just last week, since the book's come out, I've reconnected with a lot of former members and people I know and people even I didn't know. And I connected with this person who was telling me how amazing my mom was and how she took care of everyone. And I'm thinking, yeah, she was really, really loving to everybody but us. Yeah. It's a weird dynamic to see that.
I still haven't quite figured it out because I had that same reaction, and people would say things like that, and I said, "Are we sure we're talking about the same woman? Is this the same woman?" Because
Yeah.
so what is it? They're just fear of intimacy, but I mean that's an easy answer.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll say with my dad, the stuff that would happen with my dad is, like, I will talk now about how I never knew that he loved me, and I never knew any positive feelings from him. He just wasn't expressive. And his friends will always say, "Oh my gosh, he was always so proud of you. He was always talking about you. You were the only thing that mattered." And we'd be like, "Yeah, he didn't act that way." And I know with my dad, like I know his parents actively. Well, the story is when he was young, his mom said, he's too soft. He's too mushy. He's got too big a heart. We need to kind of toughen him up. And so she pushed him away and toughened him up. And now my dad is this crusty outside with a lot of mush inside. So yeah, for him, it really is a fear of vulnerability, a fear of being closed, a fear of acknowledging it, I guess. And then my mom, I don't know. I don't know. It actually recently.
Yeah.
So my mom, when she was about 3 or something, she was running and carrying a piggy bank, but like ceramic bank, and she fell and she sliced her right hand really badly. And it was like many trips to the emergency room and lots of surgery. And you think back to, this is the early 1940s, right? So probably nobody told her what was going on. Probably it was terrifying. So you kind of look at that. I finally look at that, and I said it to my brother. We're like, wow, like if you look at that, her past, you can see maybe why she was willing to give everything up for a cult, or to give us up, or to keep us separate. But I will tell you, before we finish that, the thing about a cult is that everybody is susceptible, because extreme belief, it gives, as human animals, we crave certainty, purpose, and community. And an extreme belief situation, a cult or something like that, gives you absolute certainty, purpose like you'll never have again, and a community like none other. So it absolutely fulfills so much of our human needs that we are willing and eager and brainwashed to give up everything else. That is also very true.
That is very true, and it's happened with many cults, right?
Yep.
Some to the nth degree, like Jim Jones and
Yep.
the Apple. What was that one? Heaven's Gate. That was another one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jim Jones were literally people maybe were forced to drink the poison, but they also poisoned their kids and suffocated them. Like, people did it because they believed in it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Lisa, we got to wrap this up. God, we could just go on forever. But do you have a website you want to give out for people can check you out and check out your book?
My website is Lisa Kohn Writes. So it's Lisa. The last name is K as in kite, OHN as in Nancy, and Writes as in writing. LisaKohnWrites.com. And all of my social media for the book is at Lisa Kohn Writes on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And again, the business is Chatsworth Consulting Group. But I always say to people, if you want to find me and you Google me, if you Google Lisa Kohn with a K, I'm all over the pages because I got so much publicity when the book came out. And I love to connect with anyone about anything. I'm trying to spread a message of hope. So I love to connect with people and hear their stories and spread hope.
Great. Thanks so much for coming on. This was a nice conversation.
Thank you for having me, Douglas. Thank you so much.